What is up, ladies and gentlemen? So I wanted to make a new video to help you guys out and go over how to set up a red build, full DPS, and the types of weapons and gear that you should use. I'll kind of go over the basics for newcomers that are kind of getting back into the game or just new to it. So we have a few members of those in our clan. So kind of stick with me here. This is going to be a longer video because I want to kind of cover everything because DPS builds are pretty complex. So there's a lot to cover and a lot of things to understand and why you run things the way that you do. So I'll start with the gear. The basic setup for DPS builds is crit builds. Crit damage applies to everything, and it's an easy way to get your damage numbers up. So basically you want to get crit damage rolled everywhere that you can. Crit chance you want in a couple places, which I'll kind of get into that in a little bit. What other things that you can roll there besides crit chance. But your basic setup is 3 Priest Providence because you get headshot damage, crit chance, and crit damage. All damage attributes, right? And then Fox's Prayer because it gives you rifle damage, which is going to be your primary weapon for damage builds. It also comes with Damaged Out of Cover, which is a multiplicative damage talent. And so is Damage to Armor on any piece of gear, whether it's on your weapon or your gear. Damaged Out of Cover, Damaged Armor are multiplicative, and so is health damage. There are other sources too, which I can get over to in a little bit. So that's your basic setup. 3 Priest Providence. You can also run a Grupo, which will also give you 15% crit damage instead of a 3rd Priest Providence. Then as far as chest talents, you have a number of options. The strongest chest talent is Focus, or Perfect Focus, which is what I use. Even though the marksman rifle damage is mostly useless, the extra 10% damage you get from Perfect Focus compared to regular is worth it. Even if you give up 15% crit damage, because 10% weapon damage is stronger than 50% crit damage, excuse me. You also have other options, like Headhunter, which is very fun, training headshots. Obliterate, which is good for ARs, or faster firing rifles, which I'll get into. Overwatch, which is a great team buff. It's always nice to have one of these in your build because it benefits not only weapons, but skill damage. Spotter, which is another one, is another good chest talent, which I don't have in my stash here, but basically it amplifies your weapon damage to targets that are pulsed. But it is kind of situational, so I wouldn't recommend using it. And then in terms of the mask, you can run a Grupo or a Providence to give yourself some extra crit damage, but Coyote's Mask, especially if you're soloing, you definitely want at least one in your group because it's going to give you all those buffs depending on the range. Having that, generally with reds, you want to play back at least 25 meters away. That will give you 25% crit chance, which allows you to roll weapon handling in other places on your gear, which I like to run a lot of it, because every 1% of weapon handling gives you 1% reload speed, 1% stability, 1% accuracy, and 1% weapon swap speed. So you will notice a huge difference with just one roll of it, trust me. And it's really nice because it'll make your damage more consistent because your weapons will be a lot more stable and accurate. It's definitely worth running at least one roll of it, even if it means giving up 12% crit damage. Because you will hit more shots, I guarantee it. And then you can also run contractor gloves. Keep in mind, though, that damage to armor compared to damage out of cover is a little bit more situational. Damage to armor does not apply to big tanks. It does not apply to tanks or dogs from the Black Tusk. It does not apply to any type of health targets, like reds or some raid bosses. It also does not apply to weak points, shields, I'm missing, and some other targets, but it's situational, so, and the LMG damage that you get with it is completely worthless, so they used to be the meta, but since they nerfed it, it's really not as strong as it used to be, and I honestly wouldn't run it unless you're planning to fight a lot of targets that have armor. But keep in mind, if you do run it, you're going to be a little bit low on crit chance. Speaking of crit chance, obviously crit damage build is no good without crit chance. Now the Coyote's Mask allows you to at least get between 40, 50 crit chance. That's what you want to shoot for if you're running that, which you should if you're solo, and you should have at least one in your group. If you don't, you want to get your crit chance between, I would say safely, 52 to 60. Because obviously the higher chance you have, the more damage that you do overall. So don't underestimate the power of crit chance. Even if it means you have to put it in your mod slot and give up some damage, you got to get that crit chance high. But I rely on Coyote Mask to give me that, so I don't have to worry too much about it. It's kind of a win-win. In terms of guns, Classic M1A, definitely the way to go. It is the best overall DPS weapon in the game in terms of consistent damage. You can also go with a M1A CQB, which fires a little bit faster, and you get an additional mod slot, because the M1A only comes with 3. Put you a little extra crit chance there. ARs, the Glory Days, I would strongly recommend, because this thing is a whistle. If you want to see it in action, I mean, the screen barely moves. So, but Eagle Bear, if you get it, is a raid weapon that you can only get in dark hours. The Mechanical Animal is very good for giving you skill tiers. A lot of interesting combinations you can use with that. Police M4 or the FAMAS. The FAMAS is the best AR in the game. In terms of talents, the only 2 talents that are really worth running on ARs are Fast Hands, which is #1 priority, or Killer. Keep that in mind. The Ravenous is also raid locked in the Iron Horse raid, but it is a monster against damaged armor plates, which is, if you're wondering what the difference is between damage to armor plates and damage to armor. Armor applies to like your traditional enemies that you run out, like outcasts and that have armor on them. But damage to armor plates applies to big heavies and dogs and tanks. Anything that you shoot and has that little armor break symbol on there, and you see it break off, those are armor plates. And this is the only weapon in the game that does damage to armor plates. So it is a beast and definitely a must-have in any type of DPS build. That pretty much covers the builds, the gear that you want, and the talents. And then weapon, in terms of skills, you can use the Reviver Hive, which will help keep you up, because you are going to be very vulnerable. I recommend the Crusader Shield, and the reason that I do is there is a little trick here that I can show you. What the shield does when you are on cover like this, and get enemies shooting at you from in front of you, you will not get hit. They will not, for whatever reason, they will not shoot you in the head. Which, obviously, it gives you 1.4 million armor that you can take without taking any damage, but it also keeps vigilance active, allowing you to stay in high damage. And you also want any kind of healing drone is by far the best heal that you can use for yourself. Keep yourself healed up. The only other skill that I would really use is the Tactician drone, which pulses targets, which is really good if you're going to run Spotter with your DPS build, because Spotter is multiplicative, but it's really good at pulsing all the targets in the vicinity and alerting your team to where they are. But then you're relying on your medkit, so I would really prioritize either a Reviver Hive or the Fixer drone. There's not too many skills you can use with DPS build. It's mostly for that. So that's the basic setup. In terms of specializations, Sharpshooter is by far the best. Reason being is it gives you weapon stability and greater acquisition of targets. and it gives you a flashbang grenade, which has a huge radius and is really useful. And it also gives you 50% increased headshot damage. So these two are really nice to have, as is the extra damage to your team. And using medkits reduces bleed, poison, and burn for 20 seconds, which is extremely useful when you're fighting outcasts or cleaners. So that is the basic setup. That is basically how you want to set it up. Max your crit damage. Get at least one roll of weapon handling. 3-piece Providence. Or 2-piece Providence and a Gruppo. Or 3-piece Providence and 1 Gruppo, depending on what you're running. Always have Fox's Prayer, because you're always going to be using rifles. No other piece should ever go there. And that's pretty much it. Now, there is one little trick I do want to show you with focus, if you decide to go with this, is if you are zoomed in, you'll see the little bar charge up. You have a second to zoom out and zoom back in, and that damage will stay active. It'll also stay active when you reload, allowing you to look around and pick your targets. So, just want to finish the video off with that, because I strongly recommend using focus, especially if you're doing legendary content. So that pretty much covers it up. I'll kind of wrap up the video there. If you have any questions about damage, multiplicative of damage, additive damage, types of talents, gear, skills, just let me know on the Discord, and I will be sure to help you out. Catch you guys later.